Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Herzberg, and this is the Myopia Mindset. This is a new podcast that I am putting out into the world. It's the official podcast of themyopiamindset.com, and it's a project that's very special to me. And I want to use this opportunity, this first episode, this introductory video to tell you all about who I am, what the Myopia Mindset is all about, and why you're going to want to keep us on your radar. So, first of all, this is going to be a podcast about passion, education, and motivation. I will be conducting deep dive interviews with clinicians and academics, industry professionals, and I'm also going to be doing episodes about relevant topics in our industry, hot button issues even. I'm going to bring on special guests for that. And this is also going to be a podcast where you learn things. There's going to be tips and pearls, strategies, actionable items that you're going to hear from my guests, things that you can start doing right away to improve your success in myopia management. So, what is this podcast all about? What is the term mean, the myopia mindset? This is something that I have been a student of basically for the last 20 years. Okay. I have been working in the myopia industry for 20 years now, and I have worked with some of the most successful orthokeratologists in the world. I have worked with practices who have seen limited amount of success with myopia management, and they've got the bug, they're hungry for more. But I've also worked with ECPs who have, are desperate and who have really struggled and really are not figuring it out for whatever reason. And I've learned an important thing from these three groups, and that is that if you want to be successful with myopia management, if you really want to persevere and thrive in this specialty, you really do need to think about things differently. You need to think about your patients differently. You need to think about your practice, your office flow, your scheduling. You need to retrain your staff. And then you, as the practitioner, need to become proactive and forward-thinking and creative. And these are traits that are shared by the myopia management specialists who are doing this at the top of the game. And there's a clear difference between them and everybody else. And that is what I want this podcast to be all about. I want this podcast to share all of those things that one group is doing and the rest are not, and how that can apply to you, and how you can develop a myopia mindset. And in order to do that, I want to take you back to when I first learned about the myopia mindset. So if you didn't know, I grew up in an pioneer ortho-K practice. My father is one of the all-time absolute legends in our industry. My mom is this genius-level office manager who looked at what the practice was doing and then started changing things to work to accommodate orthokeratology and myopia management. We didn't call it myopia management back then, but that's what it was. It was a process of trial and error. There were some growing pains. There were some difficult moments. There was a lot of, figuring things out and then making adjustments. And it changed the way that we thought fundamentally about a modern eye care practice, about our patients, and about how to deliver the best quality care that we could. And we're talking about a practice that is, eventually would be dominantly pediatric, almost exclusively myopia management. I mean, yes, we did all of the normal things that a standard optometry practice did, and we didn't exclusively see children, but myopia management, or more orthokeratology, is what we were known for. And patients would come to see us from all over the country and even certain parts of the world. And what I want to focus on with that is we didn't advertise. Like back then, I mean, newspapers, radio, television, all that stuff, and eventually the internet, none of it worked. All that external form of advertising didn't produce. What worked was the referral network that we set up. We turned our patients and their parents into advocates for what we did because we just delivered that such a high level of care for our patients that we made a huge impact in their lives that they couldn't help but talk about with everybody else in their life. And this is also a practice that I want to stress. At one point, we dropped insurance, and that was super scary. Okay, so that was my first exposure to the myopia mindset. It came in the form of my parents, and then I had a working education in being a part of this process and all the fundamental aspects that were involved in it. But my parents weren't the only two examples of this line of thinking, of doing things differently. So I was also the executive director of the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control. And if you don't know anything about them, they are a membership-driven organization. They're a nonprofit devoted to the research and education of orthokeratology and myopia control. And when I started working for them, it was back in 2004. Back then, it was called the Orthokeratology Academy of America. They would eventually rebrand. And back then, myopia management as a term didn't really exist. Back then, it was orthokeratology. And for the vast majority of average optometrists, orthokeratology was either an unknown or a dirty word. And I know this because as a snot-nosed kid, I worked conventions and conferences seeking out eye doctors to join our organization and become members. And I experienced a lot of ignorant eye doctors. They didn't know what they didn't know, right? And I experienced a lot of negativity around Ortho-K, that it was unethical. How dare you do this to children? All of that stuff. I heard it all. But it didn't sink in with me. It didn't demoralize me because I was shoulder to shoulder with about 100 or so of our initial charter members of that organization. And I'm talking about trend-setting optometrists. I'm talking about pioneer orthokeratologists who laid down a lot of the legwork and blazed a trail for what we have today. And guess what? They seem to have their own variations of what my parents were doing. They were forward thinking, critical thinking, creative thinking, passionate. They did not accept the status quo of optometry. They invested in the utmost care of their patients. And orthokeratology was exciting and interesting, and they loved to talk about it and share it. So I was surrounded by these people, and that is really when I started to study it. Because here's the thing. If you're running a membership-driven organization and the vast majority of optometrists that you encounter are going to be resistant to your message by default, then you have to seek out that very specific individual, that very specific myopia mindset. So back then I started to create a protocol for identifying and basically recruiting and focusing on the very specific individual because I wanted more members for our association, for our academy. And then that eventually leads to Vision by Design. Vision by Design is a meeting that I created and developed, and along with the help of some core people, turned it into an amazing success for our industry that at one point was called the Super Bowl of myopia management. And we created and designed and developed that meeting around these specific individuals, not just our beginners, but also our advanced people who were on the bleeding edge of this stuff. And then that's when I got to really get integrated into the culture and the community of a myopia management specialist. And these are the docs that would go on to be in that top success group, doing it differently than everybody else. And that is where I got most of my education in the myopia mindset and in what makes these doctors tick and what the difference is between them and everybody else. So let's examine that particular aspect in this episode real quick. So what's the secret? Well, there is no secret. This is not some sort of ancient mystery that only the sages of optometry can uncover and then expose to you. And this is not a specific kind of personality type, because there's all sorts of flavors of the myopia mindset. Each one of these doctors that I had the good fortune to meet and work with, they all had different flavors and variations of a myopia mindset that they developed on their own. So if it's not any of those things, then what's the secret? There is no secret. And I can say that because another core feature of people who are in that group who love myopia management is they love to share about it. And that's what I saw at Vision by Design. That's what we designed for. One of the core features of that meeting was that I wanted my meeting to be a place where you could learn just as much in the hallways as you could on the stage. That you would even have docs who were in the same geographic area. Both are doing myopia management. And normally you would expect them to they would be competition. They're not. They became best friends. And that is that colleague, not competitor mentality. And that's how I know it's not a secret. This isn't a treasure that somebody buried in the ground and you have to get access to it. It's not this insurmountable thing that nobody else can do that's protected by a small group of people. They share about it all the time. Now, I will say that myopia management is not for everyone, and that's okay. I'm one of these people that says not everybody should be doing myopia management. Not every optometrist should be doing ortho-K or myopia management, and that's okay. There's plenty of other specialties out there. There's plenty of other great, fantastic ways to care for your patients. But if you are into myopia management, it's awesome. It's special. It's unique. And there is a learning curve to it. But there's also the need for passion in myopia management. And that's a big part of the myopia mindset. And I'm a firm believer that passion cannot be taught, but it can be learned. And I know this, I can speak to this as well, because despite everything I told you about my history in this industry, I didn't come out of the womb passionate about myopia. I didn't learn my passion for myopia until much later in my career, despite my origin story of growing up in the practice that I did and working with trend-setting optometrists who were at the forefront of orthokeratology and myopia management. I had to learn my passion for it. And if I can learn it, you can learn it. And you should learn it. You shouldn't adopt somebody else's passion. You should figure it out for yourself. And that is a big part of what this podcast is going to be about. It's going to be about helping you develop your own myopia mindset. So here's what you can expect from this podcast and website. Okay. You're going to learn things here. You're going to be connected to our mission. You are going to either find or further develop your passion. You're going to check back in with us regularly because we are going to motivate you. I can speak from experience. I say all the time, myopia management is not easy. Okay. There is a lot of trial and error. If you're doing ortho-K, there's a lot of art that goes along with the science. There's growing pains involved. There's having to learn hard lessons and be willing to make mistakes. There's creative troubleshooting and all sorts of elements that really only you can do for yourself. But if you hear how other people overcame these problems or did this for themselves, I want that to be your regular shot in the arm, your regular motivation. I want you to listen to us on your way to the practice or the end of your day or even when you're walking your dog or doing the dishes or all the other things that people apparently do when they listen to a podcast. I want you to get fired up. That is my goal with this podcast. So here's what you can expect. I'm going to release content in which you will hear from me personally, my own thoughts, my insights, my opinions based on actual relevant practical experience and observation. I have found that optometrists really don't like asking questions. I'm not an optometrist. I love asking questions. I don't know if people think they look stupid, and if that's the case, I don't care. I don't think it makes you look stupid to ask questions. I think it actually makes you look smart to ask questions because you're willing to admit that you don't have the knowledge that you seek, and you're able to identify somebody who does and then go and get the information from them by asking questions. So I ask the questions, okay? So you're going to get a regular episode from me every single month. And here's the thing about me is if I make a mistake, if I do something wrong, if somebody differs with me in opinion, I'm going to own it. We're going to talk about it. I've been in this industry 20 years, but I never stop learning. And we will learn together as we go. Okay, so then we're also going to have our monthly deep dive interview, so-and-so's myopia mindset. I am going to take key people that I know in our industry, and I am going to do long form interviews with them about what makes them tick. How did they get started? What kind of obstacles did they face? What key pieces of advice do they have you? What is their message to you, to everyone? How can they best share what they know? How can we tell their stories so that if you're trying to develop your own myopia mindset, you can become inspired by that? All right. And then next, what we're going to also be doing is I'm going to have guests on who are doing things in our industry, and we are going to be talking about relevant topics in myopia, hot button issues even. We may even have some controversial opinions on this because not everybody's myopia mindset is the same. Not everybody agrees on all of the things at all of the time. The other thing we're going to have tips, we're going to have pearls, we're going to have strategies, we're going to have things that you can use in your practice. That is the other part of my goal with the myopia mindset. You're going to learn things here. All of this and more will come out several episodes a month. And if any of that sounds appealing to you, I also want to let you know that we're going to be offering a special subscription model to the myopia mindset through a Substack. If you are really serious about developing your own myopia mindset, if you're really serious about improving your success, then our supporter model, our subscription model is going to be for you. It's going to have extended versions of our episodes. So if I talk with somebody for, well over an hour, you're going to get all of that. Okay. Plus every month you're going to get an additional supporter exclusive episode. It's only for people who subscribe to our podcast at myopiamindset.com through our Substack. The other thing you're going to get to do, we're going to be doing regular Q&As. I'm going to bring on my father, Matthew Herzberg. He and I are going to field questions from our subscribers, from the people who support us. And that is going to be your opportunity to get access to somebody who has been a mentor and a source of inspiration for countless number of myopia management specialists. There are so many people who in our industry who have cited Carrie as a direct means of inspiration to their success, who have contributed to their success. He's practiced for Ortho-K for over 40 years. He is an absolute guru. That is a peek behind the scenes at what we're going to be developing specifically for our subscribers. So pay attention to that space. So I hope you will be joining me on this journey, this mission of mine to inspire and educate and motivate, because even though not every doctor should do myopia management, and that's okay, it's still my passion to share everything that's special, unique, and cool about doing myopia management so that we can get as many qualified, passionate people out there to address this problem, the myopia epidemic. So that's my spiel. That's who I am. That's what this podcast is. I look forward to your questions, your comments. I look forward to you taking this journey with me, and I'll see you at the next one.